The moment I stood up at that dinner table and said, "I bought this house 2 years ago, and I've been letting Elaine live here rent-free," the entire backyard went silent. You could hear the fork hit her plate. She'd spent all weekend mocking me, laughing at my so-called vision, and now the house she bragged about? It was mine. Hi, I'm Jenna, and for years I stayed quiet while my sister turned every family reunion into her personal stage. But this time, I came prepared. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water, and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. I wasn't expecting the email, not from her, not after the last reunion ended with me crying in the rental car with a paper plate of untouched peach cobbler sliding off the passenger seat. But there it was in my inbox. Subject line: Family Reunion Memorial Day Weekend. No body text, just a crisp itinerary and an RSVP link signed, "Warmly Elaine." Elaine only reached out when there was a spotlight involved. Reunions, weddings, birthdays. She didn't just attend them, she choreographed them. I once joked she ran our family like a cruise director, assigning name tags and curated playlists to every gathering. She laughed. Then she handed me a clipboard. This time, it was a backyard potluck at the old house in Asheville. The itinerary promised family trivia, casual games, and southern eats, with a note that color-coded t-shirts would be handed out on site. I could already see her. Posture perfect, dress color matching the garden lanterns, slicing brisket with one hand while narrating her job promotion with the other. I closed the laptop without clicking anything. It had been almost a year since we last spoke. That silence hadn't been awkward. It had been necessary. That night, as cicadas hummed outside my window and the Charleston heat finally broke, I brewed a cup of mint tea and reopened the message. I scrolled through the list. Uncle Dean, Aunt Karen, Cousin Marcy. They'd all be there. I knew what it would look like. Folding tables draped in gingham cloth, lemonade sweating in glass pitchers, Corinne offering passive compliments like they were Tupperware samples, and Elaine hovering, managing, correcting. Still, something in me didn't flinch this time, not in the way it used to. I hovered over the RSVP button, then clicked yes. A message popped up on my phone not long after. Julian, still want to keep it quiet? I stared at his name for a second before replying. Me, for now. Memorial Day weekend came fast. The drive from Charleston to Asheville was familiar but quiet. I didn't play music, just listened to the low hum of the tires and the occasional flap of my sun visor. Somewhere past Columbia, I passed a billboard that read, "Honor starts with showing up." It was corny, and yet it stuck. When I pulled up to the house, the sun was still high. The backyard had already been transformed. Lawn chairs in neat rows, a chalkboard menu propped against the fence, and a banner strung between 2 trees that read Walker Family Reunion 2023 in sparkly gold letters. Beneath it, photos were clothespin to a wire, baby pictures, wedding shots, vacation smiles. None of me. Elaine spotted me before I stepped out of the car. She moved across the yard with practiced ease, waving at an aunt before heading my way. She wore a white sleeveless blouse and floral skirt, breezy and camera-ready. Her expression was polished, a smile that looked great in group photos but never quite reached her eyes. "Jenna," she said, her voice light and 2 notches too loud. "You made it." I gave a small nod, stepping out with my overnight bag in hand. She leaned in for an air kiss, brushing nothing but humidity. "We weren't sure you'd come. Your RSVP came in kind of last minute." "Yeah," I said. "I debated." Behind her, a folding chair held a stack of reunion t-shirts, all sorted by size. Mine was there, not handed to me, but folded with a slight stain near the hem, like it had been dropped in the rush. Corinne came out with a tray of deviled eggs and offered a polite wave. Russell stood near the grill with Dylan, already mid-laugh about something. No one rushed over. No one gasped with joy. The scent of magnolia mixed with hickory smoke. I could hear someone tuning a guitar. Lawn games were already scattered across the yard. Bean bags and bocce balls. Elaine stepped closer and lowered her voice just enough. "Didn't think you'd come." I met her eyes and smiled gently. "You didn't think I'd be ready." She blinked. Just once. A breeze stirred through the porch fans. Somewhere behind us, someone called out for more ice. I walked toward the folding table without another word, the edge of my shirt brushing the reunion banner as I passed beneath it. Elaine was glowing, laughing with her audience, cocktail in hand. Her voice floated through the yard like music only she could compose. It was her version of church, preaching from the patio, surrounded by nodding heads and the soft clink of ice in glasses. Even the wind seemed to wait its turn. I stood by the potato salad bowl, tongs in hand, watching as she performed. She wore a coral sundress that flared perfectly at her knees, and her earrings caught the light, like deliberate punctuation. To her left, Uncle Dean chuckled too hard at something she'd said. On her right, Aunt Karen offered a second slice of peach pie as if in tribute. She once gave a toast at Grandma's memorial. It started with, "I remember Grandma's grace," and somehow turned into a 5-minute monologue about how Grandma once said Elaine had natural leadership qualities. No one interrupted her then. No one would now. I stepped toward the folding table to help lay out the cornbread and ribs, but Elaine intercepted me with a smile and a casual hand wave. "Relax, Jenna. You're a guest, not a caterer," she said, laughing just loud enough for nearby ears. I paused, holding the tray. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flicked toward the chairs like I was in the way. I set the dish down and backed away. Guests moved around the yard, scooping up deviled eggs, grabbing plastic cups of sweet tea. Dylan gave me a small nod as he passed with a plate of coleslaw, but he didn't say anything. He never did, unless he was sure no one else would hear. I found a shady spot near the edge of the yard, just out of the string light's reach. My name tag peeled slightly at the corner, the only one written in ballpoint pen while the rest had clearly been printed. I pressed the corner flat again, feeling the sticky glue give way under the humidity. Dinner began with an announcement from Elaine, of course. "Let's thank everyone who helped bring this together, though I'll admit I did most of the organizing myself," she said with a wink. Laughter. She sat at the head of the long table, and like always, the conversation swirled around her like bees to a sugared glass. "Remember when Jenna tried to build a drone?" Elaine said halfway through the meal. "She was 15? It caught on fire right on Dad's workbench." She threw her head back with a laugh. "We thought the garage was going to go up in smoke." More laughter. Even Russell chuckled as he passed the corn. Corinne offered a tight smile, like she didn't quite remember the moment, but didn't want to challenge the story. I smiled too, thin and quick. My fork hesitated over the green beans. I tightened my grip and pressed my thumb into the tines just enough to leave a mark. Dylan caught my eye from across the table and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded just once. Funny how memory worked. The drone hadn't caught fire. It had sparked because I hadn't grounded the battery correctly, and I fixed it on my own the next day. But stories aren't about accuracy in our family. They're about impact. And Elaine always knew how to land hers. After dinner, just as dusk softened the edges of the backyard, Elaine reappeared with a stack of laminated cards and a mischievous grin. "Time for a little family trivia," she announced, lifting the cards like a magician revealing a secret. "Let's see who's been paying attention over the years." Groans and chuckles rose from the table, but everyone stayed seated. You didn't walk away from an Elaine-led activity without looking rude. The questions started off simple. Which Walker cousin broke their arm falling off a trampoline? Who made the winning shot at state finals in 2010? Marcy clapped with excitement when her name was called. Then came the questions Elaine liked best. Which Walker sibling got a scholarship to 2 Ivy Leagues but chose Brown because of the beach proximity? Giggles. Eyes turned toward Elaine. "I mean, guilty," she said with a self-deprecating shrug. Next card. Which Walker sibling was featured in a Forbes 30 under 30 local list? Elaine again. She waved like a pageant queen. Then she passed me a card with a smile that didn't belong on a sister's face. "Go on, read it," she said. I looked down. Which Walker sibling once dropped out of graduate school? There it was, not even veiled, just handed to me in ink and laminate. I read it aloud. There was a pause, just long enough to sting, before the laughter returned. Not from everyone, but enough. I smiled again, the kind of smile that keeps your lips from trembling. "Not many people figure out early that a different path is worth taking," I said, my voice calm. "So I guess, congratulations to me." That stopped a few laughs. Dylan set his drink down with a little more force than necessary. Elaine just arched an eyebrow and moved on. Eventually, the game ended. People drifted into conversations about barbecue sauce recipes and next year's venue. I stood slowly carrying my cup toward the cooler near the porch. The sweet tea had gone warm. As I turned to head back, I glanced at the house Elaine stood in front of, laughing with her glass still in hand. Her laughter echoed off the siding like it belonged to her, but I knew better. I wondered, not for the first time, if she'd ever actually read the deed. It wasn't a roast, it was a brunch, but to Elaine, everything was an opportunity to rewrite my story, so long as the background was flattering and the lighting forgiving. Sunday morning bloomed golden and sticky, the kind of southern warmth that made linen cling and citrus sweat in the sun. The backyard had been transformed overnight into something out of a wedding magazine. White canopies draped between trees, a mimosa bar sparkling under glass dispensers, and folding chairs wrapped in satin bows. I found a spot under one of the elms, where the sun hadn't yet claimed the grass. A plate of melon and quiche rested on my lap, mostly untouched. Churchgoers arrived in pastel sundresses and pressed khakis, all nodding and commenting on how Elaine really knows how to host. Elaine shimmered from group to group, the hem of her pale yellow dress swaying just slightly as she moved, like even the wind was helping her shine. Her makeup was effortless, her laugh on a perfect loop. She always knew how to pitch her tone to the crowd around her, light and maternal with the aunts, clever and ambitious with the cousins, gracious and glossy with the elders. I was mid-sip of lukewarm coffee when Aunt Karen lowered herself into the seat beside me. "Well, you look peaceful," she said. "How's your work going, sweetheart?" I smiled carefully. "It's going well. I started a real estate tech project last year. We're helping smaller investors manage short-term rentals more efficiently, sort of a hybrid between a platform and a service model." Karen nodded, genuinely interested. "Like a modern property management tool?" "Exactly," I said. "We've got a few dozen units under data testing, and next month we launch a regional pilot. It's steady, nothing flashy." A pause, a real one, a warm one. Then Elaine's voice sliced through the air like the crack of an egg against porcelain. "So, she profits off other people's homes." She had drifted over, mimosa in hand, sunglasses perched perfectly on her head. "I guess that's what they call vision now." A ripple of polite laughter broke across the table. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to sting. I didn't look at her right away. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup, the heat pushing into my palms. "She's being modest," Karen added gently. "It sounds like a smart model." Elaine leaned closer, her voice low enough for only our table to hear. "Sure. I mean, these days you can call anything passive income if you say it with confidence." I looked at her then, directly. Not angry, just clear. But Elaine was already turning to greet someone else. She floated back into the crowd like she'd never spoken. Across the lawn, Dylan sat with a paper plate in one hand and his phone in the other. He didn't say anything, but his eyes met mine for a second, and I knew he'd heard it. I picked up my own phone under the table and opened my messages. Me. "Send me the deed copy. It's time. Julian. On it. PDF incoming." I slid the phone into my bag and took a slow breath. The brunch carried on around me. Kids chased bubbles across the yard. Someone passed around a tray of mini croissants. The soundtrack switched to a light jazz playlist, and Corinne made the rounds offering lavender lemonade. Everything looked curated and calm. Elaine returned to the center with a fresh drink and tapped her glass with a spoon. "All right, everyone," she called, raising her voice just enough. "Let's toast to something real this morning, to vision. May some of us eventually find one." There it was. The laugh that followed wasn't from everyone, but it was loud enough. I stood, lifted my glass, clinked hers gently. "Some of us already have," I said, not loud, not theatrical, just enough for her to hear. Elaine blinked, just once. Her smile returned, but it faltered at the edges. I didn't wait for the room to register it. I set my glass down, tucked my plate under the chair, and walked toward the gate. A few people looked up. No one stopped me. In the car, the air was thick and quiet. I turned the ignition without starting the engine, letting the silence settle. My phone buzzed. "Julian. Deed attached, time-stamped and notarized. Let me know when you're ready." I opened the email. The document loaded slowly under the hot morning sun. At the top, my name sat bold and unmistakable. Title owner, Jenna Elise Walker. I stared at it. Not because I doubted it, but because, for the first time in a long time, I felt something settle inside me. Not triumph, not anger, just certainty. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that waits. The house everyone admired wasn't Elaine's castle. It was my test of how long I'd stay silent. And for years, I passed that test, quietly, willingly even. Because sometimes it feels easier to let people believe something comfortable than to shatter their version of you, especially when you've worked so hard to rebuild it yourself. Elaine once said during a brunch, loud enough for me to hear but never directly to me, "Some people build dreams, others rent them." Her friends laughed. Her drink sparkled in the sun. I was walking past with paper towels at the time. I remember because I nearly dropped them. She never thought I'd own hers. Sunday afternoon wore a sleepy calm. The sun softened its glare, and people shifted into pockets of conversation under the patio shade. The folding chairs had rearranged themselves into little circles, and everyone sipped iced tea or lemonade as if trying to preserve their energy for the evening's final dinner. I sat near the back edge of the yard, listening without joining in. My plate balanced on my knees, mostly empty save for a single biscuit I wasn't hungry enough to finish. The scent of citronella mingled with grilled corn. Glasses clinked, and someone passed around a tub of store-bought cookies with a ribbon that read, "Home is where your story begins." Cousin Marcy plopped down beside me, fanning herself with a stack of napkins. "I still say this backyard is magazine-worthy," she said, looking out at the house with its wide porch and freshly painted shutters. "Did Elaine do all the landscaping?" "I think most of it was already here," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Well, either way," she continued, "she landed a gem. Asheville prices are through the roof. Is she renting, or did she buy in? I mean, it's hard to tell these days. Everybody's calling leased property a legacy." I blinked slowly. "You should ask her." Marcy laughed, a little too loud. "You know she always keeps things vague. Family arrangement, whatever that means. I thought maybe you'd know since you two are, well, sisters." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A new message banner slid across the top. "Julian. Notarized copy uploaded. PDF clear and time-stamped. Let me know if you want backup." I let the screen dim, then gently tucked the phone into my lap. Elaine's voice rang out from the other side of the yard. She stood near the grill with a group of family friends, gesturing broadly. "We're thinking of renovating the upstairs loft," she said. "Maybe convert it into a home office/creative studio. I mean, it's technically my space, so I want it to feel intentional." I watched her from a distance, the way you might watch a performer you've seen too many times to be surprised. Her posture, her cadence, it was all rehearsed. Even the way she flipped her hair between words had rhythm. Corinne nodded along. Russell laughed quietly. No one questioned the story. I excused myself from Marcy and walked into the house. The interior was spotless, of course, staged, almost, candles unlit but strategically placed, books arranged by color, a tray of fruit-infused water on the sideboard. I headed to the small home office Elaine once called her reading nook. It still had our father's old printer tucked under the desk, humming faintly as if it knew it would soon be used for something permanent. I opened Julian's email. The PDF loaded quickly. One page, clean, with my name printed where hers never appeared. Title owner, Jenna Elise Walker. Property address, 427 Lantern Hollow Drive. I hit print. The tray clicked twice before releasing a crisp sheet. The sound wasn't loud, but in that quiet house, it felt like thunder. I slipped the paper into a clear plastic folder I found in the bottom drawer. It still had an old sticker on it. Property tax. 2019. Fitting. Back outside, the sun had shifted again. Shadows lengthened across the yard. Laughter came in shorter bursts now, mellowed by sugar and fatigue. I sat back in my spot and watched Elaine hold court beneath the pergola lights. Her voice had taken on the tone of someone explaining something they'd just learned to someone they assumed hadn't. She always talked that way when real estate came up, using phrases like equity leverage and long-term appreciation to impress aunts who only wanted to know how she kept her hydrangeas blooming. I pulled out my phone and opened the family WhatsApp group. Me? Since I'm technically the homeowner here, I'd like to speak for a moment after dinner. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared. From across the yard, I saw Elaine glance at her phone and tilt her head, confused. Her body stilled for a fraction too long. That was all it took. She straightened, recovered, and laughed a little louder at her own anecdote. But her posture had changed. Her shoulders pulled back too sharply. Her fingers tapped the side of her glass. She was recalibrating. The conversation around her resumed, but I noticed the way people looked at their phones just a little longer, the way their eyes drifted toward me with subtle curiosity. The deed sat warm in my lap, the plastic folder catching the fading light. There was no anger in me now, no joy either, just the quiet sense of a puzzle finally clicking into place. And for once, I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I didn't need applause. I just needed the volume of lies to drop. The sky had begun to purple by the time everyone gathered around the long backyard table. String lights flickered overhead, their glow casting soft shadows on the mismatched chairs and linen napkins someone had ironed for the occasion. Candle jars dotted the center, flames barely dancing in the still air. A quiet hung over the yard, thick with end-of-weekend fatigue and the finality of shared meals. Elaine took her usual place at the head of the table, arms draped casually over the chair beside her, like a woman presiding over a boardroom. Corinne sat near her, helping to pass out peach cobbler in small Dixie cups, while Russell unfolded napkins with slow, deliberate hands. Dylan sat at the far end, halfway out of the circle, just close enough to hear everything, just far enough not to be seen as part of it. I waited until the clinking of forks and the light hum of conversation settled into a lull. Then I stood. The plastic folder felt cool in my hands despite the warm air. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't clear my throat. I just began. I'd like to share something before we all leave tomorrow. Heads turned. A few stopped mid-bite. Elaine looked up, one brow lifting with quiet annoyance. I held the folder up, then rested it gently on the table. The candlelight caught the edge of the page inside, just enough to reflect off the bolded title. I bought this house 2 years ago, I said, through a private sale from the previous owner. The deed has been in my name since then. A ripple of silence moved down the table. Some hands froze over napkins. Others quietly set down silverware. I didn't say anything because it wasn't necessary, but this weekend, with the way some things were said, I let the sentence trail off. I thought maybe it was. Elaine let out a soft laugh, the kind that masks confusion with condescension. What is this, a prank? No, I replied. It's a legal fact. She leaned forward, her voice louder than it needed to be. You're saying this house, this one, is yours? I nodded once. Yes. The air shifted. Even the breeze seemed to pause. Right then, Julian stepped through the gate. He didn't say anything, just walked toward the table with slow, even steps, holding a second folder. He gave me a brief, respectful nod before setting it beside mine. That's the tenant history, I added, and ownership documents, fully notarized, all available for review. Elaine stood now, the chair behind her scraping against the patio stone. You're pathetic, she snapped. You waited all weekend just to humiliate me? I met her eyes. My voice didn't shake. I waited 10 years just to be heard. The words landed with more silence, not because they were loud, but because they didn't need to be. Elaine's face reddened, but her mouth stayed open, suspended somewhere between denial and defiance. She looked to Corinne, then Russell, as if one of them might step in and correct the moment, rewrite it, cover it with laughter. But no one spoke. Corinne set down her spoon. Jenna, she said slowly, her voice thick with disbelief. Why didn't you say anything? I turned to her, folding my hands calmly in front of me. Would you have believed me if I had? That landed harder than I expected. She blinked, once, then twice. She looked down, lips pressing into a line. Elaine was still standing, but now her arms had crossed, shoulders tight. She wasn't glowing anymore. She was flickering. Dylan looked at me across the table. He didn't smile, didn't nod. He just let out a breath through his nose and set his cup down. It was the quietest form of agreement I'd ever seen. No one applauded, no one argued. It was that rare kind of silence that didn't demand to be filled. Julian gave me one last glance, then stepped back toward the gate. He never needed to stay long. He just knew when to show up. I didn't linger. I gathered the folders, tucking them under my arm, and stepped away from the table. Behind me, the conversation didn't resume. It didn't need to. Elaine sat down again, slowly this time. Someone refilled their lemonade. The candles kept burning, but the temperature had changed. For the first time in that house, in that yard, in that family, I hadn't waited for permission. And I wasn't asking for it now. The silence after truth isn't peace, but it's the start of it. A week had passed since the dinner, since the folders, the look on Elaine's face, and the words I thought I'd never say out loud. The house was quiet now, not Elaine's house, mine. But I wasn't there. I was back in Charleston, in my apartment that overlooked the marsh and caught the sun just right in the mornings. The light came through clean, softening the lines of the wooden floors and casting long shadows on the counter where my mail had gathered into neat piles. Everything felt still, not frozen, just steady. A mug of tea sat cooling on the windowsill. I hadn't touched it in 15 minutes, but the ritual of brewing it felt necessary, something to hold in the silence, like a heartbeat. The basil plant by the sink had wilted again. Its leaves drooped slightly, clinging to the soil. I'd watered it 3 days ago. It needed pruning, or maybe just attention. My inbox glowed on the laptop screen. 37 unread messages, tenant inquiries, a speaking invitation from a small women in tech group, even a podcast request, someone who'd heard about the quiet founder with a surprising twist. Word traveled faster than I expected, especially in real estate circles, but I wasn't rushing to answer anyone. Julian had stopped by that morning, as promised. He didn't stay long. Just handed me a manila envelope and nodded toward the table. Tenant contracts, enclosed, he said. All verified. But there's no rush. He didn't offer commentary. He knew better than to wrap closure in small talk. When he left, I let the envelope sit untouched on the kitchen table. I passed by it 3 times, once on the way to the window, once to get my phone charger, and once more to refill my mug with hot water I didn't drink. Elaine hadn't called, hadn't texted, not even a reaction emoji in the family chat, just quiet. And I was okay with that. Dylan, on the other hand, sent a short text the night after the dinner. Dylan, you didn't burn the house down. You just turned on the lights. I smiled when I read it. Not a wide smile, just enough. Somewhere between Thursday and now, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I thought I'd be. There was no gloating, no need to tell the story twice. That wasn't the kind of power I'd been after. I opened my phone and tapped the social media app I hadn't used in months. My last post was a photo of a cracked mug and a caption about work-from-home chaos. I started typing. No hashtags, no photos, just words. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the sound of strategy. I hit post, then closed the app. The tea had gone cold again. I dumped it and made a new cup, this time with honey. I walked out to the balcony with the mug in hand. The city moved below me in its usual rhythm, quiet, unbothered, alive. The salt air carried in from the harbor, crisp and faintly sweet. I breathed it in slowly. Across the railing, my neighbor's cat blinked at me from a flower pot and flicked its tail before settling in again. We shared the same mood. I walked back inside. The envelope still sat on the table, patient and plain. I picked it up, opened the flap, and slid the papers halfway out. Lease terms, emergency contacts, cleaning fees, all organized in Julian's meticulous handwriting. Then I stopped. I slid them back in and closed the envelope. Not yet. For now, I just wanted my piece to be loud enough for me to hear. And for the first time in years, I did. Somewhere between silence and strength, I finally found my own voice. And it didn't need to be loud to be heard. Letting go of old roles and quiet wounds wasn't easy, but it gave me something better than revenge: clarity. In life, we often mistake approval for love and endurance for peace. But the truth is, healing begins not when others change, but when we stop letting their story define ours. Sometimes, the softest step away from the noise is the bravest one we'll ever take. If this story reminded you of your own path, or of a time you found your peace on your own terms, I'd love to hear it. Your voice matters here too.